This video is for entertainment purposes only. Today we have a 2007 Honda VTX 1300r, and what I want to do is change out the fork oil. It only has 5,600 miles on it, so I just want to do a drain and refill. But most of the procedures I find are for fork disassembly. So I'm going to kind of try to modify that a little bit and see if I can't figure out a way just to drain the fork oil. Now, one of the nice things about the Memphis Shades windshield is I have a quick detach windshield, so I can take that off very easy, and it's going to make servicing the forks a lot easier. And I got the windshield off. Now I'm going to throw it up in the cycle jack. And I have it on the cycle jack now. The front wheel is not off the ground, but it's just mainly to get the bike straight up and down. And so what I think I want to do next is I want to take these fork caps off here, and I want to measure the level of the fork oil inside the fork. I'm kind of thinking though, I am going to jack this up and take all the pressure off the forks, so the forks are extended all the way. And so now I have the motorcycle jacked up in the air, and the front tire is just barely off the ground, so the fork tubes are fully extended. Now I'm going to take the cap off, and I imagine there's probably going to be a little bit of spring tension in there. So what I'm going to do is move around on the other side so I can kind of keep some pressure on it. And this is going to take a 17 millimeter socket. So we'll get the cap off. These are pretty fine threads on the caps, so when you put them back on, you got to be careful that you don't strip them out. And there you can see we did have the pressure on there. And we'll take the spacer out. And now we'll take the washer off the top of the spring. And now I'm going to pull the spring out. Now on some motorcycles, they have a coil spring that is wound tighter on one end of the spring than the other. So the gap between the coils here is wider on one end and will be closer together on the other end. And the spring has to go back in that same orientation. So when you pull your spring out, you have to watch and see if that is the type of spring that you have. And it has to be put back in the same way. So this is what I'm talking about right here. We can see the coils on this end here are much closer together, and here the coils are further apart. And so this end here has to go in first, because that's the way it came out. So the reason they do that is if you hit a smaller bump, these coils that are wider apart there will compress easier. And so they'll take up a light bump. But then when you hit a harder bump, these coils here, when they start to compress, you have more coils there. And so there's going to be more resistance. So you can hit a harder bump without bottoming the fork out. And so what I'm trying to do is get a shot of inside the fork with the light here. There, that's about as good as I can get, I'm afraid. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure up to the level of that fluid there. From the top of the fork here to the fluid level. Okay, looking at it, it looks like the drain bolt hole is right underneath here, and I may have to pop this axle out for the front wheel. Because I think the axle bolt is blocking the drain hole. So I'm going to see if I can leave everything in place and then just pull the axle out so I can get to it. So now before I pull that axle out, I'm going to take this cap off to try to relieve any sprung weight, because we don't want to pull that axle out with spring pressure on the fork and the axle. So I am ready to take the cap off. Before I do that, I am going to take all the pressure off. And I have the cap off on this side here, releasing all the pressure. In the bottom of the fork here, there's two bolts right here. And they take a 6mm Allen wrench to get those off. And then to hold the axle on the one side here, which is right in the side there, that is a 17mm Allen wrench. Then, on the other side, let's see, what do we have here? We have a 22mm wrench for the bolt that bolts on to this side. And so now what I'll do is I'll just let the tire, or pull the axle out and let the tire drop down a little bit and let it just sit there. I got the bolt threaded in there. We'll give her a couple love taps to get the axle started moving. And we can see what that does is that pushes it out the other side. Right here a little bit. And in the axle we have a little hole going through it here, so I'm going to take a little punch, stick it through there. Okay, and let's see what's going on the other side. Okay, that's the axle out. And so what I'm going to try to do is get you a shot of the drain bolt that is up underneath the forks here. There you can see it. You can see my finger coming in there. So that's the bolt that's got to come out. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to cheat the system here and try to make it easier than what it should be, but I'm not really gaining anything so far. And so now we're going to pull that drain bolt out, and this takes a 6mm Allen wrench here, and it's got to be a pretty long one to get up there. Let me get it started in bolt first. And I kind of turn my forks here so when it drains, it doesn't drain onto my tire. Let's see here. Oh yeah, that's gonna be tight. Let's see if I can. Now on my Yamaha, I had to put an impact wrench on this bolt down below because it was attached to part of the fork internals. And I'm hoping that this isn't the same. And it is not. This is just a drain bolt. Yeah, let me see if you're in the picture here. Yeah, that's just a bolt with a washer on it. And it looks like this looks like automatic transmission fluid. I don't know what the standard Honda fork oil looks like, but this is red. And so we're letting her drain, and what I'm going to do is I am just going to chase it with a little new fork oil. So I'll dump a little new fork oil down. I did get a little extra. Okay, I can see it's coming out pretty clear now, and that's what color the new fork oil is it's kind of a light yellow. I was looking in the manual and it says they want you to put Loctite on the bolt, on the drain bolt, so I am going to, I've got some blue Loctite. I'll round up. Okay, I think we're ready to put the drain plug back in. Just wipe it up there. And okay, let me go look up the torque specs and get my torque wrench out. And once again, if you're working on your own bike there, you're going to have to look up your own torque specs. Okay. Now that sealing washer that's on the bolt, they want you to replace that, and I don't have one, so we'll just keep an eye on it. Now we will start on the other side. And once again, we will turn the wheel so hopefully the fluid just drips straight down and not all over my rim and brake rotor. If you get any in your brake rotor there, just take some brake clean, spray it off. She'll be good to go. So let's see how this one's going to come off. Or out. There we go. Oops, sorry about that. If we look at that, you see in my hand there, it does look a little dirty there, so I'm not sorry that I'm changing it. This bike only has 5,600 miles on it, or only had 5,600 on it when I bought it. But I think it's been sitting a lot. You know, they obviously couldn't have ridden it that much. And I think sometimes sitting there is almost worse than taking it down the road. But we're just about done draining now. But I do want to show you, if we look at the bolt I pulled out, what do you think is missing? The sealing washer. So either the sealing washer's in the pan there, or it's stuck up in the fork. So I will have to round that up. Meanwhile, while I'm finding that, I'm going to run a little more new fork oil down to flush the old stuff out. Well, let's see. Actually, this stuff has kind of a green tint to it. The stuff I'm putting back in it is going to be synthetic. And we'll let that drain out, and then I will flush it with a little more. And now we're going to dump a little bit more down there. This side here actually, for some reason, almost looked a little dirtier than the other side. But we'll let that drain out. Looks like it's coming out pretty clear. Okay, now we'll see if we can't get this hole sealed up here. And we'll get out the good old torque wrench. All right. We did get the sealing washer back in it, so that's not going to be an issue. So now I'm going to let you watch me try to struggle to get this axle in. What I'm going to do is I have my Allen wrench and an extension, and I'm going to try to use this to help steer the axle as I try to get it in. So, wish me luck. I'm going to have to lift up in the wheel a little bit to get it started there. Okay. So now I'm going to turn this towards me here. Yeah, maybe I'm going to wipe my hands off here. Okay, let's see what we got here. To make my life easier, I'm going to recruit the use of this lineup bar, and I'm going to put it right through this axle here, and hopefully I can lift the tire up to where it needs to be with that and move it around. Okay, that actually went in pretty nice. Once I got that bar in there to kind of help it steer it. And now, I'm going to grab the bolt here. Start threading that in. And I think we're just going to see if I can pull the axle in the rest of the way with the wrench. Get a ratchet on this side here so it can't move. And let's just see. Now it should go in very, very easy. If there's any resistance, you got something wrong. And I'm trying to watch both sides at once, so not that handy with the wrench. Now, I should be able to turn this. Okay, now I'm going to look up the torque specs on that. Now on the axle, there's a little groove running all the way around it. And I don't know if you can see it, but I'm pointing to it with this O-ring pick here, right here. That has to be aligned with this fork right here. So this little groove has to be right up to that fork. And then you put your pinch bolts in here and tighten it. Oop, let me move you down a little bit and over. Once you get that aligned there, you put your pinch bolts in here and then tighten them down. What that does is that kind of puts the axle in the position that they want it in. Let me zoom out here. So we're aligning the groove to the axle, or to the fork here. The groove in the axle to the fork. And then we're going to put our pinch bolts in and tighten them down. And so we can see now, here's the fork, and there's our little groove there. We can see we're butted up right against it. So now we're going to put the pinch bolts in and torque them. And I got my torque wrench set. And now we're gonna torque the axle bolt here. Okay, and then we're gonna put our pinch bolts in. And we're gonna torque those. And now we'll run these pinch bolts up. I'm pretty impressed I didn't get any fork oil on the rotor, the brake rotor, or the tire. And then we get out Mr. Torque Wrench here, and we'll torque these up. All right. Now, because I tried to cheat the system and it didn't work, so the measurement I took will be kind of irrelevant. What I'm going to do is, looking at the book, it says 15.5 ounces, plus or minus, I think, 0.08 or something like that. We're going to get the sacrificial measuring cup, measure that out, and dump that into each fork. So the fork oil I'm putting back in is the Lucas synthetic 10 weight. The manual calls for 10 weight, so that's what I'm going to use. I guess I don't really have any preference on fork oil. I use the Lucas in my Yamaha, and I don't know, I'm not endorsing it, but that's what I'm putting in. And so I got it measured out, and you can kind of see the color of it. Looks a little greenish there. So we will just dump this down the fork tube. And once again, funnels are for crybabies. So I'm going to take a stab at getting it in here. As long as we don't get any good gusts of wind, I should be in good shape here. Okay. Now we're going to put our spring back in, and we put it in with the compressed coils down, going down first, like we took it out. And then we're going to put our washer on. We have our little washer here. Let me see if you can see it. Yep. And then we're going to grab our spacer and put our spacer in. Okay, so that was the easy part. The hard part is I'm going to have to take this cap and compress this spring. I'm going to have to start these threads without cross-threading them while compressing that spring. It's going to be a challenge. I don't have a new O-ring, so I'm just going to have to use the old one. And it's probably best if I don't have the camera rolling while I do this. Well, we finally got it, and let me tell you what, it was a battle royale. I tried a bunch of different methods, and the one that I finally came up with that worked was number one, patience. You gotta have a lot of patience. But what I did is I just took this speed wrench, put a 17mm socket on the end of it, And then with my shoulder, I could put pressure on the end here. I could hold it with one hand here and then turn it with the other hand here. And I could turn it till I got the thread started. Now I wasn't spinning it like this, I was spinning it like this. So, you know, it was a challenge getting it started, but it finally worked. And so the front caps are on and they're torqued. And now here's kind of an odd thing, looking at the manual again. What they want me to do is loosen the pinch bolts on the left side, and they want me to rock the thing back and forth, and that is gonna prime the front forks, and then evidently it's supposed to let everything seat. So I will get out the Allen wrench again and loosen up the pinch bolts. And so I have it off the stand, and I'm just going to loosen the pinch bolts here. I'll hop on the bike, push it forward and backwards, kind of rock it. Now, I get the torque wrench and torque these back up. Let's see here. I see that one reason why they want you to do that is you take that axle out, that caliper is going to be knocked back a little bit, so your brake caliper. So by rocking it back and forth, you can also squeeze your brake caliper too, and it sets the brake back up. So you have front brakes again. And let's see what we got here. All right, I thought I could cheat the system, make it a fast and easy job. It didn't turn out that way, so I kind of learned my lesson there. But the fork oil's changed, so that should go for quite a while now. The other thing I want to do is I want to change the antifreeze. That's what I'm thinking, antifreeze. And in order to do that, I have to pull the tank. And I just filled the tank up. So I'm going to run it around a little while, burn some gas out of it so I don't have to pull it with a full tank. The nice thing about pulling the tank is I'll be able to look at the fuel lines, the vacuum lines, all that too, and see what kind of shape they're in. So I guess probably all that's left to do is test drive this thing and see how it goes. That's the fun part. I would probably say if you are not mechanically advanced a little bit, this would not be a job for you. It takes a little bit of knowledge. I'm glad I had the manual. There were some things that I didn't know that I probably would have not have done if I wouldn't have had the manual. So it's a good thing to have. It makes it easier to understand, and that's good to get some new fork oil in it. We saw the other fork oil was a little bit on the dirty side there. We flushed it a little bit, put the fork oil back in with a measuring cup, and well, it's a beautiful day out, so maybe we'll take her for a run around the block or down the road for a little bit. So I hope this video gives you a little better knowledge of your bike. Like I say, I am not a professional mechanic, so I kind of ad-libbed this trying to take a shortcut that did not work. But it kind of gives you an idea of what's happening on your bike, what it looks like, some of the parts look like inside. It will hopefully help you decide whether you want to tackle this yourself or not. If you do, don't use this video as reference. Get a manual, or go to a professional mechanics video. But it was kind of a cool little project, and hope you enjoyed watching it.